presentation and performance. My name is Sabrina, and I'm one of the senior VAs. Throughout this year, we have all been working on individual research projects that integrate our interests in various fields such as dance, media and communications, public health, and exercise science. We are really excited to share our presentations and research with you as a part of completion of our VA in dance. And at the end of the presentations, we're going to have a short Q&A that we invite you to stay for. We also have a silent auction going on that you might have missed when you walked in, so as you're leaving or if you come tonight, please take a look at that. There's a lot of beautiful artwork that we're auctioning off. In case of an emergency, there are 2 exits, one there where you came in, and then there's one back there. And now, at ShenCo Conservatory, we don't like to say sit back and relax, but we like to say sit forward and engage. Ladies and gentlemen. Our first presenter is Sabrina van Voorhis.
Hello everyone, my name is Sabrina van Voorhis, and I am a dance and media and communications double major, and my presentation is on the unrealistic expectations seen on social media and how they can negatively impact the mental health and self-esteem of dancers. Social media has become a standard space nowadays for people to share their thoughts, interests, and milestones in life to each other online. It is also a great place for us to stay connected with long-distance friends and family. But despite how convenient social media has made life for us in countless ways, it has also developed into a place filled with unrealistic depictions of people's true lives. When we scroll through Instagram or any other photo and video sharing platform, the majority of content, what we see from our friends or influencers, are the most attractive parts of their lives. For example, this is a screenshot from my camera roll of a trip I took last summer, and as you can see, there are a lot of options to choose from whether I post them or not. How many of these did I like and would post? None of them. Either the lighting was bad, or I didn't like the camera angle, or I was slouching. This photo on the right is probably my favorite out of all of them, and it's really interesting because my back is turned, so you can't see me. We take into account camera angles, camera placement, lighting, sometimes without even realizing it, to make our posts look as aesthetic as possible. Some even put effort into hiding their imperfections from their social media posts using editing softwares to hide or alter the things that they don't want their viewers to see. These types of posts, whether real, filtered, or edited, are generally designed to impress viewers in order to get likes and comments. The best selfie is selected out of hundreds because it gets your good side, and the photo of the beach sunset has to be posted so that your friends know you're enjoying your vacation. As these posts build up on our social media pages, our lives appear so exciting and perfect to the viewer, all because we typically have a strong desire to show the best of ourselves to others, especially when we have the ability to control what they see. But when the roles are reversed and you are the one looking at someone else's page, it's easy to believe that what you are seeing is what their life truly looks like and fall into this mindset of comparison. This culture of perfectionism is so prominent on most social media platforms that it has become a contributing factor in mental health and self-esteem issues found in teens and young adults. Having constant access to unrealistic expectations set by social media can amplify feelings of jealousy, stress, and anxiety in younger minds. Additionally, the physical beauty standards that are presented across these platforms play a big role in body image issues that bring viewers. Here are some findings from some studies I found on the topic of social media content and usage and its relation to self-esteem decline. We see that there is a higher percentage of both males and females that agree that social media affects their self-esteem and body image, and higher percentages of those who say they have low self-esteem and consume an hour or more of social media a day. This type of culture on social media is also very present in the dance world, and in certain cases, these mental health struggles are amplified in dancers because of how much they put themselves on display for their viewers. Social media is a great place for performing artists to present their skills publicly, but at the same time, they're also displaying their work for anyone to judge and comment on. So naturally, they're going to want to show the best possible versions of themselves when posting their work online. Because of this, there is a sort of cycle that starts with seeing a post from another person, for example, highlighting a dance skill, which leads to comparing yourself to that post in whatever context that may be, which leads to wanting others to see what you can do at your best, which leads to you posting something that highlights you at your best. And then a viewer sees it, and the cycle starts over again with them. last semester, I conducted a study for my fellow Shenandoah Conservatory dance major students to determine whether there was any relation between my research and the experiences of my peers. This survey was completely anonymous and was comprised of various close-ended questions about their general social media usage and some questions asking about their personal experiences with perfectionism and comparison on these platforms. As this study was conducted on college-age dance majors at SU, the age range of participants was between 17 and 22 years old, and I received 32 responses in total. The data from the survey revealed that a majority of participants have been negatively affected by perfectionism displayed on social media through dance-related content they see. Over 90% of respondents said that social media has had a negative impact on their self-esteem at some point in their lives, and that they have faced comparison of their dance ability to others they see online. The majority of these participants revealed that they have felt pressured to post on their social media just because others do, and a larger percent of people would not intentionally share a piece of content of themselves that they were not proud of. Some shared comments such as, "Often I will look at social media posts and it will make me begin to overthink my own decisions and whether I am truly on the right career path. I often wonder if I need to look different or do something better to make people think a specific way about me." Another said, "I wouldn't want others to see something I'm not proud of." And another said, "I would also be worried about what other people would think or say about it." Many responses were centered around comparison in areas such as body image, lifestyle, dance skill, or performance opportunities. From the data collected, my findings support the claims in my previous research that perfectionism is very present in the dance world on social media and is shown to contribute to mental health decline in younger dancers. As a viewer of these social media posts, we must understand that we never truly know someone else's mindset or intentions behind what they post. So it can be damaging to one's mental health to be comparing yourself to what you see online. And as a poster of this type of content, it can be a helpful practice to promote sharing progress online and showing others that they don't have to present themselves as perfect on social media for others to see, especially those that are growing in both their skill and love for the art of dance. Here are my references. I will now present a dance piece I've been creating over the course of this semester, inspired by my research, depicting the struggle and isolating feeling that comparison from what is seen on social media can feed into through storytelling lens. I've had the pleasure of working with 6 wonderful dance major students on this work entitled Through the Lens of Comparison. Thank you.
just inside my head. I wanna expire and do all the things I said. I'm talking in circles. That's neither here nor there. I'm searching for purpose in this game of musical chairs. Can this circle be a square? Is this true though? Is it there? When the old becomes the new, you know you'd come back to the truth. I'm drowning in fire. I'm drowning in fire. Oh, I'm walking for miles. It helps me clear my head. The sky has the answers, even if the clouds will it instead. I don't need your worry, need your support to take me there. When this heart is at its deepest, it will rise up in one big flare. Oh, I'm drowning in fire. Ooh, I'm drowning in fire. Oh, I'm drowning in fire. Ooh, I'm drowning in fire. I'm drowning in fire. Even if it's just inside my head. And I wanna expire and do all the things I said.
I'd like to thank my dancers for dedicating their time, effort, and artistry into this piece and its process. To conclude, social media is an amazing space for artists to express themselves and promote their work to the public. Performers can be provided with a more accessible and interactive online audience from social media, in addition to performing live or in film. And it has now become a great place for artists to grow in community all over the world. With my findings, I hope to bring more awareness to how this perfectionism culture can affect younger dancers throughout their growth and training in the art, and to make their transition into social media a safer mental experience by emphasizing to them early in their training that it's okay not to present perfection to the world. To combat this culture of perfectionism and comparison, social media platforms can foster positive spaces if used and consumed carefully. It may be beneficial to put into practice healthier social media habits to help prevent mental health issues from arising for both ourselves and for others, such as limiting personal screen time or filtering out types of content that are known to cause a negative drift in thoughts. And one of the most important things to think about are the younger audiences, the ones with growing minds, interests, and passions. If we encourage posting the real moments, the mess-ups, and just the progress, and teach them that they do not have to worry about presenting their lives a certain way online. There may be a better overall understanding that perfection is not reality, despite what social media may convey. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Teagan Tillman. I'm a BA Dance major, and this is my capstone project titled Dance as an Industry, a Fight for Professional Validity. So dancers can be found virtually everywhere in the entertainment industry, Broadway stages, to concert tours, film sets, cruise ships, and the list goes on and on. Still, they are some of the most undervalued artists in the industry. So why is this? For my project, I examined this question to find both the causes and potential solutions for it. This starts by understanding the dance profession as it is today. So a dancer's typical job falls under the classification of independent contractors or gig workers. Gig workers have the freedom to pursue many different job opportunities for diverse and ever-changing careers, but they lose many of the protections that typical employees receive. This can include job security, access to health insurance, and government protections like minimum wage, unemployment, overtime, and more. Because of this lack of protection, many dancers turn to the help of unions. Unions help artists receive benefits like health care, have access to things like collective bargaining power, and help to set the industry's wage standards. However, they do have their own set of limitations. This can include yearly dues and initiation fees, and complex and exclusionary eligibility requirements. In addition, unions also don't guarantee work for their members, but they do prevent their members from taking jobs that are outside of the union. This specifically matters when understanding how little dancers are actually paid for their work. At the heart of dancer mistreatment is in the dancer's paycheck. Dancers are often paid at extremely low rates, even in the most competitive and prestigious jobs in the industry. When considering commercial dance, music video production is one of the greatest jobs a dancer can hope to have. However, record labels are known for underpaying these dancers. Even well-known artists like Beyonce have been known to pay for dancers as little as $200 a day for their work. According to union rules, these dancers should be getting paid at least $515 a day, but labels easily avoid actually doing this by simply calling their shoot low budget. Dance advocacy groups like Dancers Alliance push dancers to fight for the enforcement of these rates, but dancers often lack the leverage for this to actually be effective. Another example of prestigious dance jobs that pay very little is in the Super Bowl halftime show. In a rare case, the 2022 Super Bowl went under fire for requesting their dancers work for free. In this situation, union interference simply did not happen, and dancers were outraged. Public attention and protest led the producers of this show to agree to pay these dancers at a minimum wage rate, but that was still far below the so-called industry standard. Some have pointed out that many of these dancers would have happily worked for free. And if dancers would work for free, then what's the problem? Well, willingness to work does not excuse the exploitation of workers, especially by massively profitable institutions like the NFL. The reality is that the Super Bowl is the most lucrative sporting event in the United States. The event brings millions of dollars to host cities and generates millions of dollars in ad revenue. The Super Bowl is so profitable that every NFL player in the game is guaranteed a six-figure bonus at the end of the night. The Super Bowl has the money to pay dancers, but they don't believe that they have to. These issues come down to the perceived value of dancers in our culture. To understand this perception of dancers in our culture, we have to look at the treatment of dancers within the public eye. When fighting for recognition, dancers face notable mistreatment in the form of inadequate accreditation, industry exclusion, and the lack of professional accolades. Going back to the music video sector of commercial dance, it is important to recognize that dancers and choreographers are rarely credited in these videos. Even famous dance-centric music videos like Madonna's Vogue or Beyonce's Single Ladies fail to credit dancers and choreographers. In addition to accurate credit, dancers often face exclusion from the very events that celebrate their work. Dancers in the recent Mean Girls movie musical noted that the only dancers that were invited to the press and premiere events for the movie were dancers that had specifically large social media followings. The exclusion is also extended to professional praise, where we see award shows like the Oscars or the Tonys lacking categories that accurately recognize the work of dancers and choreographers. These award shows would greatly benefit by adding categories that would praise the work of dancers in the field, specifically when recognizing the performance of dance. So why don't we see it? If dance is everywhere, social media, clubs, stage screen, why is it still being undervalued? Well, the issue here is not in visibility, it's in the skewed cultural perception of a dancer's worth that was caused by harmful systemic practices and the persistent use of dismissive language. So what is dismissive language here? Well, some examples of language that harms dancers include phrases like background dancer and cattle call, or referring to a dancer simply as a body. Although these may not be intentionally harmful, they can cause harm and dehumanize these artists. Dancers would greatly benefit if we updated these words and phrases to include new phrases like collaborator, dance athlete, or dance artist, to name a few. If we want to make the entertainment industry a safer, more inclusive place for dancers, we must stop using harmful language, stop excusing free labor practices, stop ignoring the professional needs of dancers, and stop ignoring and neglecting the health and safety precautions that need to be in place in dance workplaces. We have to start shifting our language to language that uplifts dancers. We have to start prioritizing dancer access to healthcare. We have to start enforcing wage standards. We have to start recognizing dancers through accolades and accurate credit. And we have to start allowing space to hear dancer voices. We all can also benefit from the continued advocacy for dancer needs, calling out harmful practices, and using unions to achieve all of these goals. So, dance is not a hobby, it's not a side job, it's an industry. Dancers deserve fair pay, safety, and professional respect. Recognition must extend to crediting, awarding, and including dancers. We can use unions and collective action to achieve these goals, but they have to have stronger support. The industry must work to improve and evolve language, policy, and perception. The future of dance depends on advocacy, visibility, and industry-wide change. Thank you.
Class double major with a minor in health communication, and I'm super excited to share just a little bit of my BA capstone research from this past year. It's entitled Incorporating Dance to Reduce Sedentariness and Improve Health Outcomes Among Remote Workers. And I actually have two parts to my research. First is a rationale to support a program of this nature. And then second, I conducted a cross-sectional study to gather some more information about what doing that could look like. So just diving straight into my rationale. So this is where I did a very comprehensive look at existing literature surrounding this topic, this population, dance, all the things. So just first talking about the issue of sedentariness, or time that you spend sitting, not moving, physical inactivity, all of that. So sedentariness is on the rise in the U.S. adult population. U.S. adults are spending more time sitting than they ever have before, and that is for a variety of reasons. But we see that on the rise, and the issue with that is it is very risky for your health to spend extended, prolonged time sedentary. This includes increasing the risk for a variety of chronic conditions specifically, so this includes heart disease, cancers, all of those things. It's not considered the most prevalent risk factor for a variety of chronic diseases, and it is most strongly associated with those chronic conditions above things like smoking, obesity, the things that are more researched and well understood by the population. So we see a huge issue there, and then at the same time we have a growing remote worker population. So remote workers, people who work from home, work in the remote setting. This is a population that is growing significantly in our population in our country recently, and also around the world. And this was growing before the pandemic, and then the pandemic boosted it, and then those trends are continuing. So now we have millions and millions and millions of people working remotely. And this is an issue because remote workers experience sedentariness to a much greater extent than the majority of the population. There's limited literature on this, but some studies have shown that those who work from home versus those who work in a traditional office setting, even though they are working the same types of jobs, those who are working from home spend an additional 2 hours per day sitting. And so this is a population where we see the issue of sedentariness and increased risk of long-term chronic conditions that are very costly physically and economically. This is a population where we see this becoming an issue. And so dance, what does dance have to do with any of this? So dance as a form of physical activity is a very unique form of physical activity and one that is very understudied. And so dance has been found to be more effective to reduce your risk of all of these things versus traditional exercise that you may think of. And dance is also a artistic form of physical activity, so it offers more unique benefits, such as also adjusting social isolation, memory, cognition, all of those things that also play into this population and this issue as well. And so current literature suggests that dance can be plugged into this, and just in combination of there just being very limited existing literature, limited studies already being conducted on this issue, on this population. This is a new issue, a new population, and then also dance as just an understudied field. I was able to conclude that there's a promising opportunity here and a novel approach that can be taken to this issue that is just persisting and getting worse, and that is through dance. And so, research supports that this type of intervention could be effective, but it's only effective if we understand the population we're trying to reach, because if they won't receive an intervention that we are putting out to them, then it's no good, even if research says it can be effective. And so that's why I conducted this study on the perspectives of U.S. adults on a dance-centered intervention of this nature, because we're dealing with a non-dancer population, and dance is something different, something unfamiliar, something that might take them a little bit to get on board with. And so I just wanted to understand a little bit about their experiences and perspectives on this. So this cross-sectional study was a questionnaire-based research study, and I used the Google Form platform, and it was anonymous. It was only 15 questions long, so it took only about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. Majority multiple choice and Likert scale questions with one open response, and there were 3 sections of questions. This was open for about 2.5 weeks, and I used convenient sample methods in order to recruit participants, and I was able to have 52 participants in this study of all age groups, genders, occupational status, all those things. A little over half were remote workers themselves. So jumping into my findings, first I wanted to see what does my research support, what past research has supported about this. And so I asked How many hours do you sit during a typical workday at your current job? So just understanding their lifestyle. And we can see that a majority of my participants reported sitting for over 7 hours in their job, which is very concerning considering that a typical workday is only 8 hours. And so you have that uninterrupted, prolonged sedentary time that is shown to be very dangerous. And as we get greater increasing intervals of time spent sitting, we see that remote workers in the yellow are making up a majority of those responses. And so this is in alignment with past research that has shown this association. Next, I wanted to understand their perception. Do they see this as harmful? Do they see this as dangerous? Do they see this as a problem? Because if not, that's somewhere that we have to meet them, because they're not going to engage in a program to solve something that they don't see needing to be solved. So here I have some stratified data, but this is one of the questions I asked: which rating most closely describes how harmful you believe sedentary time to be? And so we can see here that a majority of the respondents said around 3, 4, 5, so on the higher end, but again, not necessarily accurate to what research is showing about how costly and harmful sitting is. So we just see an overall low perception of harm. But if we look specifically at the yellow bars here, males and remote workers reported that they felt sedentary time to be less harmful than their counterparts. And this is especially alarming considering that remote workers are the ones of greater risk, and also males that make up a majority of the remote worker population, which is also supported by my data. And so we see that the ones being harmed by it the most are the ones perceiving it as least harmful. So we see a disconnect there that we have to kind of meet our population in. And then finally, to ask about dance, I wanted to gauge their preferences, their overall, dance versus a traditional exercise-based intervention that they may be more familiar with and is more common. And so this first chart here, this pie chart, kind of just shows that overall there was a preference for traditional exercise-based intervention. And then again, some stratified data there. We see that in blue, the males and remote workers primarily preferred traditional exercise-based intervention over dance intervention. So again, we see that these populations who could benefit the most from this program are the ones with the least initial interest in. Again, another disconnect that's really important to understand when we're considering how we're messaging, creating marketing around this program, and then structuring the program itself. I also had one open-ended question just to get some qualitative data on this, and this just asks them to share their other, hesitations or concerns or thoughts just about the use of dance in this way in their lives. And so some listed some benefits that they felt it would offer to them and their daily lives, their work schedules, all those things, and then some also voiced some hesitations. And so these benefits specifically are really important for us to understand, because these are the things that we can play on, these are the things that we can use as leverage when building this program, promoting this program. And then at the same time, hesitations are especially important to understand, because these are things that we need to purposely dispel in how we are communicating this program, how we are building this program. So my key findings just from this study is that remote work is associated with prolonged sedentary time, and that the harm of sedentariness is generally under-recognized, and that at-risk groups are the ones that have the lowest perception of harm. So again, this warrants some educational elements perhaps to the program itself to inform people how harmful this is, to get them to engage in this program. And then the value of dance activities also under-recognized. So just a low preference for dance and a lack of understanding of the benefits that dance could offer to them, even above normal traditional exercise. And so we also just see an overall low preference for dance-centered interventions, which would warrant some additional effort to address people there. And so my conclusions from all of my research is that there's an opportunity to address sedentariness in remote workers with dance. Research supports it could be effective, but only if we use targeted and strategic messaging and marketing strategies, so really tailored, targeted, specific approaches to how we are creating messaging surrounding this program and the program itself. And more specifically, we need to address perception and knowledge gaps among the population we are trying to reach. And we also have to be mindful of their opinion, that the people engaging may not be initially interested. So that really plays into how we go about all of this. And then we need to intentionally reach those high-risk groups, the ones being most harmed and the ones who could benefit the most, reaching those groups with this potential approach. So where do we go from here? This kind of suggests, gives us some insight about what a future program could look like. And dance is an understudied field, so more research needs to be done in order to get there. And so part part of this is looking at the health advantages of different dance styles. So again, really looking into, especially in regards to non-dancer populations, what are the different health advantages of these styles so that we know how to best build the program itself. And then with that, just understanding the optimal length and frequency of the intervention, so how long and how often people would be engaging in this program during their days, throughout their weeks, in order to maximize health benefits. And then at the same time, just consider delivery method options and feasibility, because we are dealing with a remote worker population. So is it online? Is it synchronous? Is it asynchronous? Is it in person? So really just collaborating with health professionals, dance professionals, to see what would be most feasible and effective in order to deliver this kind of intervention. These are my references. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi, I'm back. Like I said, my name is Maria, and I'm a double major in exercise science and dance with minors in biology and physiology. And my research is on the presence of lower limb imbalances in flexibility, balance, and strength in collegiate dancers. Starting off with a little bit of background information. As a lot of us know, dance requires a combination of athleticism and artistry to execute repetitive movements while also considering the aesthetic demands. And while the goal of a dancer is to be symmetrical, a dancer's body and dance experience can create asymmetries. An asymmetry in the body is defined as the degree of lateral preferences, and there are many causes of asymmetry, things like side dominance, anatomy, training styles, and choreographic influences. Current research suggests that there are strength and range of motion imbalances in the lower limbs in dancers, and that they can be related to injury occurrence. A few studies found that the risk of injury was greater in the perceived dominant limb compared to the non-dominant. And range of motion, balance, and strength in both lower limbs are needed for all dance styles, and these variables are also super crucial to preventing injuries and then also achieving the desired product. So this information and the lack of extensive research on this topic led me into my research. I broke my hypotheses down into two different options. The first was that there are statistically significant differences in flexibility, balance, and strength measurements between the right and left lower limbs in collegiate dancers, and the second is that there is a relationship between the magnitude of imbalance and injury history. So looking at those variables that I talked about, and then also if they are related to injuries that dancers are experiencing. Going into my methods, I sent out an interest form to all dance majors at ShenCo University. I ended up with 20 participants with ages 18 to 23. As you can see, split among the years, it was pretty even, but then I did have one male and 19 females who participated. My procedure was broke down into two parts. The first was a survey that I adapted from McDougall and colleagues. There were three parts to this survey. First, starting off with getting to informed consent. The second, looking at basic demographics like age, sex, and gender. And then the third was a 12-month injury history of the lower limbs. I defined injury in this study as missing one or more class, rehearsal, or performance due to the injury. In the survey, I asked specific questions like total number of lower limb injuries, number on each side, and then also specifics about each injury. For the second part of my procedure, I held an individual testing session for each participant. I measured height and weight. I led them through a 5-minute warm-up that consisted of a lunge series to warm up the major muscle groups of the lower limbs. I measured flexibility using a standard 2-arm goniometer, and I was measuring passive range of motion, so I was moving the limb into the greatest range of motion that they could go. And I measured hip flexion, so that's bringing the leg forward, hip extension, bringing it back, knee flexion, bending the knee, extension, seeing if there was any hyperextension in that knee, and then ankle plantar flexion, which is the point of the ankle, and then ankle dorsiflexion, so flexing it up. For balance, I used a Y balance test to assess single leg dynamic balance. I also measured leg length so that I could create a composite score for my analysis, and then also so that each measurement was relative to their height. For strength, I used a single leg 5 repetition maximum test on a free motion epic leg press machine to assess this single leg strength. We did a series of sub-maximal repetitions to then lead up to their 5 rep maximum weight that they can move for 5 repetitions. I use SPSS statistics software to analyze all my data. When looking at my first hypothesis, which was looking at the relationship between the right and left limb using the data collected on the 3 variables, I found one variable that was significant, and this was the difference between right and left plantar flexion range of motion, so that's again the pointing of the foot, and I had a p-value of less than 0.001. Looking at my second hypothesis, this was again looking at the relationship between the magnitude of imbalance and the total number of injuries. I also found one variable that was significant for this as well, and this was the relationship between the magnitude of hip extension asymmetry and total number of injuries. And so how I calculated magnitude is that I subtracted the left raw score from the right raw score. So in this graph, looking at it, on the x-axis here, we have a side that has negative and then positive. So the negative would mean that the left had more range of motion than the right, and the positive being that the right was more flexible than the left. And then right here in the center is that they were even on both sides. Over here on this axis, I have total number of injuries. And the relationship that I found was that as right limb flexibility increased, the total number of injuries decreased with a p-value of 0.045. Pulling this all together, I had 2 major findings. The first was that there was a significant difference between the left and right ankle plantar flexion range of motion. The second was that there was a correlational relationship between difference in hip extension between the lower limbs and total number of injuries experienced. This finding, I did not find any current research that supported it, but looking at what I had, there could have been a few errors that could have led to a significant result. First of all, being that 10 out of my 20 participants did not report an injury, so that was data that that was less helpful for seeing any correlations, but they just didn't have any, so there was nothing to report there. And secondly, this data is very sporadic, and it kind of has a trend down, but it slipped right under the significance value that I used of 0.045, or 0.05, it being 0.045, so slipping right underneath that. Looking into the future, so what to do with this research. First, based off my first finding, looking at implementing complementary programs to address any undesired ankle plantar flexion imbalances. So these could be incorporating flexibility training and resistance training of the ankles more specifically, so that it will help prevent any injuries that could occur in the ankles for dancers. And then secondly, just more extensive research on dancers on this topic. Future research may want to examine these parameters with a larger sample size that is more representative of varying institutions, and all of this will just help create a bigger pool of research on this understudied population. And that's it for my presentation. I was inspired by my research and its finding to create a piece that abstractly represents it. To conclude my capstone, I will present emotional imbalance, which explores the relationship between symmetry, asymmetry, and the consequences of each. Thank you. transition into a Q&A. Alright, hello everybody. So my name is Lainey and I'm an alumni. I graduated with a BA in dance in 2023 and I graduate next week with my master's in athletic training. And I'll be moderating this Q&A. So to start, is there anyone out there that has questions they'd like to ask to any of our presenters? Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
so from a healthcare provider point, I'm curious to know, you found some statistical significance that you question the power of your work just based on sample size and patient possibility. But with that, what do you think is the clinical significance? What would you say to a healthcare provider who says, how can I better assess my patients, especially those in high school and college?
Yeah, so I think really understanding the population, like specifically dancers, knowing that this may be something that they're exposed to and thinking, because other research has suggested imbalances and injury relation to it. So thinking about that, knowing the population, and then if a dancer comes with an injury or something like that, potentially thinking about this as a possible contributor, so how it could be related to what they're experiencing, and I think just having that, the more like knowledge, more awareness of that could be important for from a clinical point of view.
My second question is on, so my question there is similar, in that I'm curious to know, very interested in research, but with a public health hat and a dance hat, where do you see this concept going in a real application? What would be your, I guess my question is more, if you were dreaming of what you could do to marry those two in a population self-competition, what would that be?
Is this in regards to my research specifically or just in general?
No, into research.
Okay,
But
okay.
I think you can't separate the two because you have that mindset, so give us whatever.
Yeah. So it's been a struggle to combine dance and public health for sure. But I would say with my research, it was very interesting to look at it from a perspective of a non-dancer population and plugging dance into that. Because majority population health issues, are far beyond the scope of just dancers, but dance offers benefits to everybody. And so I think that was very interesting to do with my research from this year, and I just think, yeah, I guess the goal, the dream for combining them in this sort of this project area would definitely be seeing more people using dance, using the physical benefits of dance, the health benefits of dance beyond physical markers to have an impact on their lives, to lower their disease risk of a variety of things. And I think for something like this, it could definitely be a matter of, how do we get this incorporated into workplace settings? How do we get this incorporated into employers, organizations, things like that? Yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but okay.
Workplace setting was an interesting observation.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think males specifically are going to be hard to reach with this sort of thing, just with the nature of dance. And I think this ties back to some of what people reported for like, why they would be hesitant to, get on board with a dance intervention. Some of them said they don't want to look self-conscious. Some of them said it might not be enough for me. Some of them said it would be too much for me. So just really language and educational elements to how this kind of program is promoted, just to dispel those things, to say like, if we have instructors or however this program is built, delivering dance in some way, tell them, let them know, like, hey, like, you might have a bunch of people in here who are worried about being self-conscious, and then that informs their language, and I think that could definitely cater towards the males a lot. And I think in regards to just reaching remote workers anyways with this, I think it would be very beneficial to go through employers specifically and market this towards them in a way that relates to, hey, like, these are the health of your employees, employee health programs exist, and this is a new issue, a new thing. Hey, now you have half of your work population working from home and they're dealing with this lifestyle and these health risks, and so we have to meet them there. And so really, I think it would be beneficial to also go through employers and explain to them the benefits of dance, all of these things, and then through them, their workers could participate in this program if it was provided or encouraged to them by their employer. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Go ahead. You guys want to say yes, Sabrina.
That's a really good question. I personally am not very active on social media, which is something that I want to try to be better at, but it is something that I struggle with a lot, with over analyzing what I feel like putting out into the world, and because I'm looking at my own stuff and I'm pinpointing all these things that are wrong with it, but then I show my roommates and they're like, what do you mean, it looks amazing. And so yeah, that is something that I struggle with a lot, and it's something that I'm trying to just I don't know, just not put as much thought in, and just promote the realism, and because the world is not overanalyzing it the way that you yourself are. And so yeah, that's something that I always try to think about, but it's always something that creeps in. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think the other night we kind of got into a similar discussion, but overwhelmingly, I think the number one thing that has to happen is to actually achieve change. It has to be demanded, and I think the way that you do that in our industry, and especially any unionized industry, is through strikes and through striking, and just saying, if you do not respect the work of dancers, you will not receive it. I think that is the number one thing that I think could actually bring change. I think when thinking about just other less aggressive changes, I think it has to start with just increasing awareness. I think even dancers don't realize how big of an issue some of these things are. I think we're kind of cultivated to have a mindset of taking the back seat and not really speaking up about a lot. I think it starts with that change as well. It starts with realizing that our voices and concerns and fears about being in the industry matter and deserve attention and deserve responses. And just being told that this is the way that it is not going to be good enough anymore. I think that's the bottom line there.
Absolutely. There are so many, both just in general, there are a lot of benefits to social media, again, especially nowadays, like the internet is everywhere. And in a dance specific mindset, I said in my presentation, like, there's so much community to be grown all over the internet, all over the world, for artists of all kinds, and just putting your work out there is just a great way to get to network and just get recognition from potential employers or choreographers. And even, I asked in my questionnaire about, whether they would put something out to the world that they weren't fully proud of, and a lot of responses said that they wouldn't want to put something out into the world that they weren't proud of, just because it's not their best and they don't want those future employers to see that. But a lot of other people said that they would put it out into the world for the same reason, because you don't know what choreographers are looking for, and they might want that thing that you're not proud of, and someone else might think it's amazing when you don't. And so, yeah, I think it has so many benefits, and that we can utilize it and foster very positive spaces and just continue to grow, grow professionally through social media. So, yeah. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Anybody else? Yes, please.
Handing the mic is even dangerous. Annika, my question is really for you. Looking at sedentariness, it seemed to pivot. I wanted to ask if you had looked at any aspect of it, because with an industry that really kind of demands sedentariness from performing arts across the board, dance, theater, music, it really does ask us to sit in presentations like this, in concerts, and aspects like this for long periods of time, address the concern inside the house before moving to workplaces and items like that. Did asking that question in beginning this research look at addressing it from within before moving outwards to other spaces? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, so I think when I was starting this research, I actually began this research last year. And so starting this research, we really saw that this was an issue inside the home, especially now with things like technology, things that enable us to just stay at home and sit. Definitely still an issue in settings outside the home, as we see we're all sitting here right now. But I would say that my research definitely stemmed from this new arising issue of staying at home, and how that relates to not only physically sitting, but then also things like you are socially isolated, you are, you know, like mental health, all those things. Social health also plays a role in specifically sedentary time in the home setting versus a setting like this. And so I would say both definitely need addressed, but when I was focusing my research, it was just like the newness, the new developing, the need for more research on this, a lack of research on this, specifically in the home setting. And you know, remote work doesn't have to happen in the home per se, but majority of the time it does. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question about this.
Any other questions? Yes. Is it on?
Yeah, it's on.
Annika, do you have any interest in pursuing this into like pursuing it into a full length like program or something like that? Any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, definitely more research needs to be done to get to that point, but I think there is, you know, obviously potential to build a program of this nature. I built a program last year specifically to address hypertension risk, lowering the risk of hypertension with this kind of intervention. It did not involve dance, it was physical activity, exercise, traditional exercise centered, so I did do that. But I would definitely be interested in continuing this in some capacity. I think this could definitely inspire more research that needs to be done in especially the building and structuring of the program itself. You know, what does the actual like schedule look like? Is this an app format? You know, that kind of thing. But yeah, definitely something I would be interested in keeping going.
I'm going to jump into the question because I have a question for Maria. I'm curious how you think dance educators and dance teachers play a role in mitigating this imbalance we're seeing, and if you have any thoughts on how this could be addressed starting in the studio.
Yeah, so a topic that we kind of got into on Thursday was this idea that this is more of like a preventative measure and looking at it before it starts. So that could obviously involves dance educators because those are the people who are the primary contact in the studio, in the performance space. So, and potentially creating more relationships between, for example, like a strength coach and a dancer, because athletes have strength coaches, athletic trainers, all at their disposal at all times, and they're doing that cross training and things like that. So finding a way to include that in the dance space to address these imbalances and bring information, because if we can teach dancers about any imbalances or just more about conditioning and what that looks like from even an earlier age in high school when they're starting, that could be really crucial to helping prevent any chronic injuries that they may be experiencing throughout. Dancers, in the research that I read, are most predominantly exposed to lower limb chronic injuries. So how can we prevent those using the information from studies like this and really bringing all of the people who are involved in a dancer's well-being into that is really important. Does that answer that?
Alright, I think that's about all the time we have, but I know our presenters are going to hang out for a bit if anyone wants to come up and ask some other questions. But thank you all for coming and supporting the BA class of 2025. Let's give them one more round of applause.